The marketplace buzzed with life. The air smelled of roasted corn and fresh flowers. Vendors shouted their prices. Cars honked. Children laughed as they ran past shoppers. Vanessa Clark walked through it all like a queen entering her court. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, sharp and commanding. Sunglasses covered her eyes, but her gaze swept over the crowd with the precision of someone used to being noticed. Her handbag gleamed under the sunlight. 2 assistants flanked her, following her every step with eager smiles. Vanessa was perfection in motion, admired, envied, untouchable. Across the walkway, moving carefully, was Miriam. Her shoes were worn at the edges. Her dress was simple, faded, but clean. She carried a small basket of vegetables and a paper bag with medicine for her son. Every step was cautious, each movement weighed with care. And then it happened. A sudden shove from behind caused Miriam to stumble forward. At the same moment, Vanessa turned sharply, distracted by a notification on her phone. Their paths collided. The basket fell. Tomatoes rolled across the floor. A bottle of medicine toppled and slid under a nearby car. The crowd gasped. Vanessa looked down at the mess, her expression twisting with disgust. She leaned over and muttered loudly, "Watch where you're going." Miriam quickly bent down to gather the tomatoes, her hands shaking slightly. I'm sorry," she said softly. It was crowded. Vanessa stepped back as if Miriam were a stain on her dress. Her lips curled into a sharp, mocking smile. "Honestly," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "if you can't even afford proper shoes, at least learn how to walk properly." Some of the crowd chuckled nervously. Others looked away, uncomfortable. No one stepped forward to defend Miriam. Miriam slowly stood, holding the crushed tomato in her hands. Her eyes met Vanessa's. Calm, set, but resolute. "It was an accident," she said quietly. Vanessa scoffed. "Accident? People like you are always accidents." Her laughter echoed, cutting through the marketplace. Miriam lowered the tomato, her fingers brushing it gently. "Sometimes," she murmured almost to herself, "what is crushed can still grow again." Vanessa's laugh was sharper now. "Not in your case." At that moment, Vanessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, irritated. Another buzz. Then another. Her assistant leaned close. "Everything okay?" Vanessa frowned, her confident mask faltering. Messages popped up on her screen. Urgent, account activity alert. Legal notice received. Bank access temporarily suspended. Her pulse quickened. Her fiancé called. She answered immediately, but his voice was tense. "There's a problem. The authorities are investigating the company. They've frozen everything. Don't post anything. Don't talk to anyone." Vanessa's hand shook. The world she thought was solid suddenly seemed to crumble. She turned slowly, scanning the crowd. Miriam was gone. But the whispers started immediately. Someone had recorded the entire incident, including her cruel words. For the first time, Vanessa felt an unfamiliar sensation, fear. The morning sun spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Vanessa's penthouse. The city skyline gleamed beneath her. Everything she had worked for glittered around her. Marble floors, designer furniture, artwork she barely remembered buying. But the shine could not mask the tension tightening in her chest. Vanessa paced slowly, heels clicking on the polished floor. Her phone lay on the counter, buzzing insistently. Bank alerts. Social media notifications. Emails marked urgent. Every buzz made her stomach twist. She had grown up in wealth, yes, but comfort had never meant safety. Her father had built a business empire from nothing, teaching her that mistakes were unforgivable. His love was measured in success. Weakness was shameful. Her mother, too, had taught her that appearances were everything. A tear in a dress, a smudge on makeup, a poorly chosen word, they could ruin a life. Vanessa had learned early, value equals wealth. Respect equals status. Emotions were optional. And so she built a life that reflected perfection. Her wardrobe, her car, her social media feed, all curated. Engagements, vacations, dinner parties, all a showcase of success. Followers measured her worth with likes and comments. Every detail of her life was a performance, polished and untouchable. Yet cracks existed. Her fiancé Daniel had been distant. Late-night calls. Meetings she was not invited to. Occasional sharp tones when she questioned him. Something in his behavior had shifted, but she forced herself to ignore it. Her brand deals were slowing. Posts that once earned thousands in likes now barely reached a fraction. Engagement dropping. A single misstep could destroy everything she had built. At home, she maintained control wherever she could. Her housekeeper moved carefully, fearful of any misstep. Her assistant flinched at every sharp word. In restaurants or boutiques, she corrected mistakes loudly, the way a queen corrected her subjects. Power made her feel safe. Control made her feel important. Yet that day at the market, something slipped through her fingers. The small collision. The mocking words. The stolen moment captured on someone's phone. Vanessa sank into her designer chair, phone in hand, scrolling through alerts. Each notification struck her like a blow. Social media post. Video goes viral. Brands withdraw partnerships. Friends cut ties publicly. Legal notice received. She swallowed hard. The confident mask she wore for years cracked under the weight of reality. A memory came unbidden. She was 10. Standing in her mother's living room, dressed in a frilly pink dress, holding a trophy from a school spelling contest. Her mother's lips were tight. "Not bad," she said, "but next time make sure you win flawlessly. People respect perfection." Vanessa remembered the shame, the sting of her mother's words. That feeling had never left her. It had only grown, morphing into the arrogance she wore now. Because if you controlled how the world saw you, no one could hurt you. She looked at the market video again. The crowd's laughter. Miriam's calm, sad eyes. Vanessa felt something unfamiliar. Panic. Fear. Exposure. Vulnerability. Her phone buzzed again. Daniel's name flashed. She answered immediately, voice tense. "They're moving fast," he said. "Everything is under investigation. Don't post anything. Don't talk to anyone." Vanessa nodded, though he could not see her. "I understand," she whispered. She hung up and leaned back in her chair. The city below sparkled, indifferent to her panic. Her empire, built on control and appearances, was beginning to crumble. Vanessa knew one thing with terrifying clarity. She had underestimated the consequences of her arrogance. And somewhere in the shadows of this unfolding chaos, Miriam, quiet, unassuming, dismissed by the world, was about to become the most important person in her life. Vanessa's reflection in the window stared back at her. The perfectly made-up face, the designer dress, the polished image, none of it mattered now. The real world, messy and unrelenting, was closing in. And for the first time in her life, she was not sure if she could survive it. The sun had dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple as Miriam made her slow walk home. Each step on the uneven sidewalk was careful. She clutched the small paper bag of medicine tightly. Her worn shoes made quiet scuffs against the cracked pavement. Her house was modest, a small structure with cracked walls and a tin roof. The garden was sparse, just a few struggling plants in plastic pots. But it was home. And to her son it was everything. Inside, the house smelled faintly of boiled rice and soap. Her 8-year-old son Eli lay on a thin mattress. His small chest rose and fell weakly, and a slight cough escaped his lips. "Did you get it?" he asked, eyes wide with hope. Miriam smiled gently, brushing back his hair. "Yes, Eli. I got it. The medicine will help you sleep tonight." He grinned, the first spark of relief in days. Miriam set the medicine down on the small table, her hands lingering on the bottle. She remembered the market earlier, the laughter, the mocking, the crushing embarrassment. Her heart still ached from the humiliation Vanessa had caused. And yet, she did not feel anger. She had learned early that life was cruel, yes, but it could also be beautiful in the smallest ways. The laughter of a child, the quiet moments of dignity, the strength found in surviving hardship. Miriam had not always lived like this. Years ago, she had worked as a teacher in a well-respected school. She wore neat dresses, carried books proudly, and her life had structure, respect, and modest comfort. She had a husband, a loving man named Samuel, who worked as an accountant. Together they had dreams, small, meaningful dreams, of building a stable future. But one day, Samuel uncovered financial mistakes in the company he worked for, the same company that Vanessa's family now owned. He tried to report them. He was ignored, fired, shunned. And then, under the weight of stress and grief, he died suddenly. Miriam's life unraveled. Savings disappeared. Friends vanished. Yet she never lost her dignity. Now, standing in her small kitchen, she reflected on the market incident. Vanessa's words had been sharp, cruel, and public. But Miriam had learned something from her own hardships. Revenge rarely solves anything. Anger rarely heals. Pride and patience, however, could be powerful. She sat beside Eli and held his small hand. "Everything will be okay," she whispered, though her voice carried both hope and weariness. Later that evening, Miriam turned on the old television, catching the news. Her breath hitched. Vanessa Clark's face filled the screen, not in a glamorous setting but with headlines screaming, "Financial fraud investigation rocks Clark empire." Influencer Vanessa Clark's viral video sparks outrage. Miriam's fingers tightened around the edge of her chair. She had known Vanessa Clark's family. Long ago, her husband Samuel had tried to protect that very company from internal corruption. He had been dismissed, ignored, and his warnings lost in the shuffle. Miriam's mind raced. Could this be connected? Could the young woman who had mocked her, so careless, so arrogant, be tangled in the same mess her husband had warned about years ago? She felt a strange calm. The world had a way of balancing itself, she thought. The arrogant often fell, and those who survived hardship carried strength unseen. And in that moment she realized something profound. Vanessa's crisis and her own life were connected. Somehow. She did not yet know how, but she sensed it deeply, like a pulse beneath the surface. Miriam closed her eyes, allowing herself a quiet moment of reflection. She thought of the crushed tomato, the marketplace, the laughter, and the dignity she had maintained. She had survived humiliation before. She could survive it again. And perhaps, just perhaps, the woman who had mocked her, the one who thought herself untouchable, would need her one day. Her resolve strengthened. Not for revenge. Not for recognition. But because life had taught her the power of patience, of quiet resilience, and of using one's strength for purpose, not pride. Miriam kissed Eli on the forehead and whispered, "Tomorrow we keep going. No matter what." Outside, the city lights flickered on. Somewhere in a far corner of the same city, Vanessa Clark's life was beginning to unravel. And Miriam, though unaware of the exact details, would play a role in what came next. For now, all she could do was prepare herself and protect her son. A quiet smile formed on her lips. She was ready. The next morning, Vanessa's phone exploded with notifications. She could barely keep up with the flood. Video goes viral. Vanessa mocks poor woman in public. Brands pull support from influencer. Social media erupts against Vanessa Clark. Her hands shook as she scrolled through comments. Shameful behavior. Disgusting how she treats people. This is why money doesn't buy class. Her perfectly curated world was unraveling in hours. Followers she had spent years gaining now turned against her. Sponsors that once lined up to collaborate publicly cut ties. Statements appeared on brand websites. "We do not condone discriminatory behavior or cruelty. Effective immediately, our partnership with Vanessa Clark has ended." Vanessa's assistant hovered nervously. "Shall I call PR?" "Call them," Vanessa said, voice tight, but inside, panic churned like a storm. Tell them to fix it." But nothing could be fixed. Her fiancé, Daniel, had already been under investigation for weeks, though she had hoped it would stay hidden. Now the investigation was public. Banks froze accounts linked to his company. Any money Vanessa could access vanished. Her social media notifications continued to flood in. Someone had posted the marketplace video again, adding a caption. "The poor woman handled this like a queen. The influencer? Not so much." Miriam's calm face, her dignity in the chaos, was now being celebrated across platforms. Hashtags trended, hashtag Grace in Adversity, hashtag Miriam Hassan. People compared her poise to Vanessa's arrogance. Vanessa's heart raced. She had never felt so exposed. She leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the screen, helpless. Every polished image she had posted over the years felt meaningless now. Her assistant tried to speak. "Ma'am, maybe a statement? An apology?" "No," Vanessa whispered. I don't know what to say." The media had already begun painting her as the villain in a cautionary tale. Television hosts criticized her behavior. Influencers debated her morality. She saw headlines like, "Wealth and Arrogance, Vanessa Clark's Fall from Grace." Influencer mocked the poor, and the internet is furious. Even her friends began to distance themselves. Invitations were rescinded. Dinners canceled. No one returned calls. Vanessa tried to make sense of it all. She walked to the balcony, looking over the city she had once felt untouchable in. The streets below seemed indifferent to her panic. The people she had once seen as beneath her now seemed more powerful than she ever was, because their dignity had not been tarnished by arrogance. She sank into her designer chair, head in her hands. She thought of the marketplace, of Miriam's quiet strength, and the words she had spoken aloud to the crowd. "You may have more money than me, but that does not make you greater," Miriam had said. Vanessa repeated the words quietly. "Does not make you greater." The truth of them hit her harder than any headline or legal notice. For all her money, her fame, her curated life, She had nothing that mattered now. A buzz on her phone pulled her from her thoughts. It was a formal notice from the court. Vanessa Clark is required to appear for a legal hearing regarding ongoing investigations connected to Clark Enterprises. Representation is advised. Vanessa froze. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Then she noticed the representative's name on the notice, Miriam Hassan. The same woman she had mocked. The one she had laughed at publicly. Her stomach turned. She stared at the screen, feeling a wave of dread crash over her. The world was shrinking, closing in, and the person she had treated as insignificant now held her fate in her hands. Panic surged. She grabbed her phone again. Daniel's name flashed. She hesitated, then dialed. "Vanessa, it's getting worse," Daniel said, voice tight with stress. "Everything is frozen. Accounts, investments, legal investigations are active. You need to stay quiet." Vanessa's breath caught. But why her? Why Miriam? "I don't know," Daniel admitted. "But she's connected to the investigation. She has information. She can make or break this." The reality of it sank in like ice water. Her life, the image, the power, the control, was gone. And in 2 days she would be forced to face Miriam directly. Vanessa collapsed onto the couch, staring at the ceiling. The polished penthouse felt like a cage. Every luxury, every accolade, every follower, none of it mattered. The woman she had mocked, laughed at, dismissed, now represented the key to her survival. And in the silence of her apartment, Vanessa realized something terrifying. She had underestimated the consequences of cruelty. And the person she had humiliated would not forget. Vanessa's heart pounded as she stepped out of the black car in front of the modest building. It was unassuming, tucked between a small grocery store and a laundromat, far removed from the luxury offices she was used to. Her hands fidgeted nervously with her designer purse. Every polished step she had taken in life seemed meaningless now. She was about to meet the woman she had publicly humiliated, the same woman who now held the key to her survival. Inside, the air was quiet and professional. Papers stacked neatly on desks. A few people walked past in soft conversation. Vanessa's assistant stayed at the entrance, whispering, "She's here." Miriam sat at a desk, focused on her work. Her posture was calm, composed. She did not rise immediately when Vanessa entered. Vanessa swallowed hard. She had rehearsed apologies in her head, hundreds of them, but they sounded hollow now. She forced herself to speak. "Ms. Hassan." "I need your help," Vanessa said, her voice small, stripped of arrogance. Miriam looked up slowly. Her eyes were steady, not angry but assessing. She folded her hands on the desk. "You mocked me in public," Miriam said simply. "And you humiliated me. People laughed. You laughed. And now, you want help." Vanessa nodded, barely meeting her gaze. "I know I don't deserve it. I made a terrible mistake. Please, I need guidance. I don't know who else to turn to." Miriam leaned back, studying her. The consequences of arrogance can't always be fixed with words. Actions matter more than apologies. Vanessa's pulse quickened. She had never felt so exposed. She had always been in control. Always untouchable. And now, she was nothing in this room except a woman asking for mercy. I understand," Vanessa whispered. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I can't lose everything. Not like this." Miriam's eyes softened, but only slightly. She had seen desperation before. And she had seen people like Vanessa, used to privilege, blind to the struggles of others, struggle in ways they never imagined. "I can help," Miriam said slowly. "But only if you face the truth. Not just about the investigation but about yourself. About who you've become. Can you do that?" Vanessa's throat tightened. Pride had always been her shield, her weapon. But here it felt like a trap. She nodded, voice trembling. I will. I have to." Miriam studied her silently for a long moment. Then she stood, walking to the edge of the desk, reaching into a folder. She pulled out documents and slid them across to Vanessa. "These contain what you need for the hearing. Your company's files. The evidence you'll require. But understand this, if I discover even a hint that you are trying to manipulate or mislead me, our arrangement ends. Do you understand?" "Yes," Vanessa whispered, barely holding back tears. Miriam paused, looking at her. "You mocked the dignity of someone struggling, thinking your wealth made you untouchable. You were wrong. And you need to live through that realization before you can ever be trusted again." Vanessa's lips quivered. She nodded, swallowing hard. "I understand. I'm ready to face it." Miriam returned to her chair, calm and composed. Vanessa felt a weight pressing on her chest, the first true weight of responsibility she had felt in years. Outside, the world continued as it always had, indifferent. But inside that small office, Vanessa realized something profound. The person she had dismissed, the one she had thought beneath her, now held the power to save her. And she would have to earn it. For the first time, Vanessa felt fear not for her image, her wealth, or her status, but for her very self. She thought of the market, of the crushed tomatoes, of Miriam's quiet dignity. And she understood, finally, that humiliation was not just a moment of shame, it was a lesson. A long silence filled the room. Vanessa took a deep breath. I will face it. I will do whatever I must. And I will change, she said. Miriam's eyes met hers for the first time fully. There was no softness, no pity. Just the quiet assessment of someone who had survived hardship and expected truth. Good, Miriam said. Then we start there. But remember, truth is not always convenient. It can hurt. And it will. Vanessa nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She felt the first flicker of humility she had ever known in her adult life. And somewhere deep inside she realized, this was only the beginning. Vanessa sat on the edge of a small cot in a sparsely furnished room. Gone were the marble floors, the designer furniture, the gleaming skyline view. Her penthouse had been emptied. Her assets seized. Every reminder of her former life was gone. The room smelled faintly of damp wood and old paint. She curled into herself, staring at the blank walls. The phone on the table vibrated again, notifications flashing relentlessly, but this time they were not opportunities. They were reminders of her fall. Daniel had left. She had called him a dozen times, but there was no answer. His silence screamed more loudly than any words could. She remembered the early days when he had been distant, cold, but she had ignored it, convinced her image was enough to hold him. Now he was gone, leaving her alone. Outside, she could hear voices from the street, muffled but clear enough to feel the judgment. Neighbors gossiping, reporters speculating, strangers mocking. Vanessa imagined the whispers. She's finally getting what she deserves. That's karma for her arrogance. Rich, cruel, and now powerless. She pressed her hands to her face, feeling the tears she had so carefully hidden for years finally spill. Flashbacks came unbidden. The marketplace. The crushed tomato. Miriam's calm eyes. The laughter of the crowd. Vanessa's words, sharp and cruel. People like you are always accidents. Her own voice echoed in her mind. The memory was unbearable. She had always believed wealth made her untouchable, her words harmless. But now she knew the truth. Words lingered. They had power. And she had wielded them recklessly. Her phone buzzed again, this time a news alert. Vanessa Clark's public humiliation goes viral. Internet reacts to influencers' fall from grace. She read the comments with trembling hands. The public had shifted their admiration to Miriam, the woman she had mocked. Every article, every post, every whisper online confirmed it. She was alone. Her friends had stopped answering. Her sponsors had walked away. Her fiancé had abandoned her. Her empire had crumbled in a matter of days. For the first time in her life, Vanessa felt the weight of true vulnerability. Not just fear of losing money or influence, but fear of herself, the woman she had become. She sank lower on the cot, remembering her mother's words from years ago. Perfection is everything. Weakness is shameful. She had lived by those words all her life. And now, stripped of wealth, stripped of image, stripped of pride, she realized how hollow they were. No one came to console her. No one would. And that realization cut deeper than any public scandal. Her reflection in the small, cracked mirror on the wall looked unfamiliar. The perfectly made-up face was gone. The polished veneer she had worn for years had cracked completely, revealing raw vulnerability underneath. She looked at herself and whispered, I was cruel. I was blind. Her body shook with sobs she had never allowed herself in public. Every act of arrogance, every word of scorn she had spoken over the years came rushing back in a relentless tide. She could almost hear Miriam's calm voice from the marketplace. You may have more money than me, but that does not make you greater. And now she knew it was true. Vanessa reached for the small bag she had brought with her to this temporary space. Inside was nothing fancy, just a few clothes, some toiletries, and a notebook. She opened it and began to write, unfiltered. No posts. No likes. No carefully curated image. Just raw thoughts, her fear, her shame, her guilt, her need to change. Hours passed. The outside world moved on without her. Social media had already moved to the next scandal. Reporters speculated about her mental state. Influencers commented on her fall from grace. But in that room, alone, Vanessa faced something she had never confronted: herself. No wealth, no power, no applause, no validation, just herself. And in the quiet, stripped-down solitude, she understood. The world had finally taught her a lesson her parents had never truly given her: the lesson that dignity, compassion, and humility mattered more than money or status. She pressed her forehead against her knees and whispered a vow to herself. I will change. I will face this. I will make amends. I cannot undo the past, but I will not be cruel again. Outside, the city lights flickered on, indifferent to her pain. But inside that small, empty room, a seed of transformation had been planted. Vanessa's phone buzzed again. She ignored it. She didn't need reminders of her past. She needed to find the person who could help her, the one she had humiliated, the woman with strength she had mocked and dismissed. She pulled a deep breath, straightened her back, and for the first time in years, allowed herself to feel completely, terrifyingly human. This was her lowest point. And from here, she had nowhere to go but forward. The air smelled faintly of cooked rice and soap as Vanessa stepped into the modest community center. She had left her designer clothes behind. Today, she wore simple jeans, a plain shirt, and shoes that were practical rather than flashy. Her hair was tied back. No makeup. No jewelry. No airs of influence. She paused at the doorway, taking a deep breath. Every muscle in her body was tense. Every instinct told her to flee, to hide, to retreat into the comfort of her old life. But that life no longer existed. And she needed Miriam. Miriam was sorting through boxes of donated clothes when she noticed Vanessa standing there. Her eyes narrowed, assessing. Vanessa took a cautious step forward. I wanted to apologize, Vanessa said softly. Not just in words, but in action. I want to help. I want to make amends. Miriam crossed her arms, unimpressed. Words don't fix humiliation. Actions do. Are you ready for that? Vanessa nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. I am. From that day, Vanessa's life took on a new rhythm. She arrived at the center early, staying late. She scrubbed floors, arranged donated items, and served meals to children who had never known luxury. She watched mothers hand food to their children and felt something she had never felt in her penthouse: the quiet satisfaction of helping without attention. No cameras. No applause. No social media posts. Just people, real lives, and the impact of small acts of kindness. One afternoon, she knelt beside a group of children, helping them fold donated clothes. A little boy looked up at her and asked, "Do you live here?" Vanessa smiled gently. "No. I just come here to help." The boy nodded, satisfied, and returned to his task. Vanessa realized then that she had spent years seeking admiration from strangers online, while ignoring the real difference she could make in actual lives. Weeks passed. She tutored children struggling in school, organized supplies, and assisted in fundraising drives. Each day was exhausting, but each day she felt more grounded, more human. Miriam observed her from a distance. The change was slow, not instant, but genuine. Vanessa did not complain. She did not seek attention. She did not expect praise. She worked quietly, consistently, and with humility. One evening, Miriam approached her as she arranged canned goods on a shelf. "You've been here for weeks now," Miriam said. "And you haven't quit, complained, or demanded recognition." Vanessa looked up, tired but calm. "I have to prove I've changed. Words are meaningless. I want to make up for the hurt I caused, and for the arrogance I carried for so long." Miriam studied her silently. There was no instant forgiveness. But she saw sincerity. She saw a woman stripped of pride, humbled by life, willing to work, not for social media clout, but for real impact. "Good," Miriam said finally. "That's the first step. You're learning something most people never do: how to act when no one is watching." Vanessa nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you for giving me a chance. For not shutting the door." Miriam's eyes softened slightly. "The door was never closed. But you needed to open it yourself." From that day forward, Vanessa's redemption was not measured by public praise. It was measured in the quiet victories she witnessed. A child smiling after a meal, a mother relieved to receive school supplies, the community trusting her to help without judgment. Slowly, her own heart transformed. Wealth and influence had once been the measure of her worth. Now she understood that kindness, humility, and responsibility were far more powerful, and far more enduring. Miriam continued to watch, noting the consistency. Vanessa did not take shortcuts. She did not seek attention. She did not falter in the face of discomfort. Every small task reinforced her sincerity. Finally, after a particularly busy day, Miriam approached her with a folder of documents. "You've shown consistency, dedication, a willingness to confront your past and work for good," Miriam said. "I think it's time I help you legally." Vanessa's hands trembled as she accepted the folder. Relief, gratitude, and a flicker of hope surged through her. This was more than legal aid. It was validation that change, when sincere, could open doors even for someone who had fallen so far. Miriam added quietly, "But remember, this isn't about erasing the past. It's about proving you've learned from it. True change is seen in what you do, not what you say." Vanessa nodded. "I understand. And I will keep proving it. Every day if I must." That night, as she returned to her modest temporary apartment, Vanessa reflected on how far she had fallen, and how far she had grown. The fear, humiliation, and isolation had stripped her of everything she thought defined her. And in doing so, they had revealed what truly mattered: compassion, humility, and the strength to act for others without expectation. She knew the path ahead would not be easy. She would face scrutiny, judgment, and the lingering consequences of her arrogance. But for the first time she felt ready. Not because she wanted to regain status, but because she finally understood the value of dignity, both hers and others. And in the quiet moments, Vanessa allowed herself a small smile. She had found something she never had in wealth, luxury, or social media fame: purpose. The courtroom was silent as Vanessa stepped inside. Gone were the designer heels and polished suits. Today she wore a simple blouse and slacks, her hair tied back neatly. She felt exposed, but this exposure was different now. It was honest, not performed. Miriam sat a few rows ahead, reviewing documents quietly. Vanessa caught her eye and gave a small, respectful nod. No words passed between them, none were needed. The trust had been earned through weeks of genuine effort, humility, and action. The judge entered, calling the session to order. Vanessa listened as the proceedings unfolded. The investigation into Clark Enterprises revealed key details: her fiancé Daniel's involvement in fraud, the irregularities in the company accounts, and the steps Miriam's charity had taken to uncover the truth. Miriam had been instrumental. Her meticulous notes, her knowledge of past corporate structures, and her persistence in investigating irregularities provided the evidence needed to exonerate Vanessa from direct wrongdoing. Vanessa felt a weight lift as the truth became clear. She was not guilty of the fraud. But this legal victory was secondary to the lessons she had learned. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited, cameras flashing. Social media buzzed. But Vanessa faced them differently this time. She did not flaunt her vindication. She did not seek sympathy. She spoke honestly. "I want to acknowledge the harm I caused, not just in the marketplace but in the way I carried myself for years," Vanessa said, voice steady. "I allowed arrogance, pride, and carelessness to guide my actions. I mocked, belittled, and humiliated someone who did nothing wrong. I am deeply sorry." She paused, letting the words settle. "This is not a performative apology. It is a commitment to do better, to act with humility, compassion, and responsibility in everything I do going forward." The cameras captured her sincerity. Some viewers remained skeptical, others were moved. But the message was clear: Vanessa had faced her mistakes, and she had chosen growth over excuses. Miriam's son Eli received a scholarship and medical support that had been pending due to the investigation's delays. Miriam watched her son smile, realizing that the balance of power had shifted not through wealth or influence, but through courage, patience, and quiet strength. Vanessa approached Miriam after the hearing. "I can't thank you enough," she said softly. "You didn't just help me legally, you helped me understand what I've been blind to my entire life." Miriam studied her for a long moment. "You've done the work, Vanessa. Not everyone would have faced the truth, admitted fault, and taken steps to change. You've earned this cautiously, step by step." Vanessa nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'll continue earning it every day." They shared a moment of mutual respect. The old power dynamic, wealth and status versus poverty and humility, had completely reversed. Now trust, dignity, and action defined the balance between them. Later, Vanessa returned to the community center. She continued her work, organizing donations, tutoring children, serving meals. She no longer sought recognition or validation. Each small act became a testament to the person she wanted to be. Meanwhile, the media narrative shifted subtly. Stories began highlighting Miriam's heroism, her calm dignity, and the way Vanessa had begun to transform. Headlines now read: "From arrogance to action, Vanessa Clark's journey of redemption. Grace and dignity, how a humble woman changed an influencer's life." Vanessa saw the truth in these stories. She had not sought fame but change. And change, she realized, mattered more than public approval. That evening she visited Miriam at her modest home. Eli ran to her laughing. Vanessa handed him a small gift, a token of her gratitude. Miriam watched quietly, appreciating the gesture, understanding that Vanessa's growth was genuine. "I don't expect forgiveness," Vanessa said quietly, turning to Miriam. "But I promise to continue learning, listening, and acting with integrity. Not for reward, not for recognition, but because it's the right thing to do." Miriam nodded, a small, approving smile on her face. "Actions matter more than words. You've proven that you're willing to follow through. That's enough for now." As Vanessa walked home that evening, she reflected on the journey. Her wealth, status, and curated life had been stripped away, revealing who she truly was. And through struggle, humility, and service, she had found meaning, purpose, and a sense of real dignity. She thought of Miriam, of Eli, of the countless small lives she could touch. The public scandal no longer mattered. What mattered was impact, compassion, and integrity, things money could never buy. For the first time in years, Vanessa felt light, grounded, and truly human. The sun rose over the bustling marketplace, casting a warm glow on stalls overflowing with fruits, vegetables, and handmade goods. The air was filled with chatter, laughter, and the occasional cry of a street vendor advertising their wares. Vanessa walked slowly down the main aisle, her steps unhurried, her posture calm and humble. Gone was the designer elegance she had once flaunted. She wore a simple dress, comfortable shoes, and carried a small bag, not for display but for practicality. A commotion arose near a stall. A young man was mocking a woman for her tattered clothes, sneering at her as she fumbled to count coins for vegetables. Vanessa's heart tightened. She remembered too vividly the sting of public humiliation, both as the perpetrator and as someone who had once been powerless. Without hesitation she stepped forward. Her voice was firm but gentle. "Hey," she said to the young man. "That's enough. Speak with respect. Everyone deserves dignity." The man's laughter faltered. He muttered an apology and moved on. Vanessa turned to the woman, who looked at her with surprise and gratitude. Vanessa offered a small smile and helped her count her coins properly. From a distance, Miriam observed the scene. She stood near a fruit stall, Eli at her side, eyes wide as he watched Vanessa. A small smile crossed Miriam's face, quiet, approving. She had seen the arc of Vanessa's transformation, from arrogance and cruelty to humility, compassion, and action. Vanessa continued walking through the marketplace, offering assistance where it was needed, speaking kindly to vendors, and acknowledging people with respect she had never shown before. She moved through the crowd like someone reborn, her every action reflecting the lessons she had learned. For Miriam, it was a confirmation. Power does not come from wealth or status. It comes from how one treats others, how one acts in moments of choice, and how one stands in the face of both privilege and vulnerability. Vanessa paused for a moment, watching the marketplace unfold around her. She inhaled deeply, feeling grounded in the simple, honest rhythm of life. She had lost everything, and in doing so she had found what truly mattered. The final thought lingered in her mind, clear and unshakable. Wealth fades. Words linger. Compassion endures. As Vanessa walked on, Miriam watched from a distance, her subtle smile a quiet acknowledgement. The cycle of power, arrogance, and humility had come full circle. And this time, compassion had the final word.